Israel was quiet, but it wasn't a peaceful quiet. It was the silence of a land under judgment. The ground was cracked and dry. The skies were like brass, holding back the rain. But this wasn't just a drought in the fields. It was a drought in the hearts of the people. They had drifted away from the God who had delivered them from Egypt, chasing after empty idols and forgetting the covenant they had made. The spiritual air was thick with compromise and confusion, a nation adrift without an anchor. Then, out of nowhere, a man appeared. He had no title, no royal introduction, no pedigree to announce him. He simply carried a message from the living God. His name was Elijah, the Tishbite, and he stood before King Ahab, the ruler who had led Israel deeper into idolatry than any king before him, and he spoke with fearless authority. He didn't bow to the crown. He represented the King of Kings. Elijah spoke one sentence, and the course of history shifted. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word. Just like that, the sky sealed itself shut. The rain stopped. The clouds vanished. The land began to wither and suffer under the heat of a relentless sun. The nation's prosperity, built on the blessings of the very God they had rejected, began to crumble. It was a terrifying demonstration that the God of Israel, not Baal, controlled the weather, while the nation, led by an enraged King Ahab, searched for the prophet who had dared to challenge their gods. God hid him. He sent Elijah to a quiet brook, the Kerith ravine, a place of solitude and dependence. There, in the stillness, God provided for him in a miraculous way. He was fed by ravens, unclean birds, bringing him bread and meat every morning and every evening. It was a lesson in divine provision. When the brook eventually dried up, proving the drought's severity, God sent him somewhere completely unexpected to Zarephath, a town in the heart of pagan territory, to a poor widow who had nothing left. This widow was at her absolute end. When Elijah found her, she had only a handful of flour in a jar and a little olive oil in a jug. She was gathering sticks to prepare one final meal for herself and her son, after which they would wait to die. But Elijah gave her a test of faith. He asked her to make a small loaf of bread for him first, and then for herself and her son. He gave her a promise from God. The jar of flour will not be used up, and the jug of oil will not run dry, until the day the Lord sends rain on the land. In a moment of incredible trust, she chose faith over fear, obedience over logic, and God honored her choice. The jar of flour never ran empty. The jug of oil never failed. For over a year, in the middle of a famine, her small home became a place of miraculous daily provision. After 3.5 years, God sent Elijah back into the heart of Israel. It was time for a confrontation. He gathered the entire nation on the slopes of Mount Carmel. On one side stood Elisha, the lone prophet of the true God. On the other side stood 450 prophets of Baal, sponsored by the royal court. Before the watching crowd, Elijah posed a question that still echoes through the ages. How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. The people, caught in their indecision, remained silent. So, Elijah proposed a test. 2 bulls, 2 altars. The prophets of Baal would call on their God, and Elisha would call on his. The God who answered by fiery is God. The prophets of Baal went first. From morning until noon, they cried out, "Baal, answer us!" They danced and shouted around their altar, but there was no voice. No one answered. No one paid attention. As the hours passed, their efforts grew more frantic. They slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. They prophesied wildly until the time for the evening sacrifice. But still, there was only silence. Their God was powerless, an invention of their own minds. Then it was Elijah's turn. He called the people to come near him. He took 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel, and he rebuilt the altar of the Lord, which had been torn down. He dug a trench around it. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he did something that seemed insane. He had the people pour 4 large jars of water over the sacrifice, and the wood not once, not twice, but 3 times, until the altar was drenched and the trench was filled with water. There'd be no doubt this was a work of God. Then Elisha stepped forward and prayed a simple, powerful prayer. Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again. And suddenly fire fell from heaven. Not a spark, but a consuming blaze of divine power. It burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, and the soil, and it even licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell prostrate on the ground and cried out, "The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God." The contest was over. The true God had revealed Himself in undeniable power. But spiritual victory on the mountain didn't translate to an easy life in the valley. When Queen Jezebel heard what had happened, she sent a threatening message to Elijah, promising to kill him. And the man who had faced down hundreds of false prophets, who had commanded the heavens, was suddenly overcome with fear. Victory didn't last long. The threat was real. Fear returned. Elijah ran for his life, exhausted, overwhelmed, and ready to give up. He journeyed a day into the wilderness, sat down under a broom tree, and prayed that he might die. But God was not finished with him. As Elijah slept, an angel touched him and provided food for him. Strengthened by God, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, in a cave, God met him. He asked, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" God revealed Himself, not in a great wind that shattered rocks, not in an earthquake, not in a fire like the one on Carmel. After the fire, there came a gentle whisper, and in that still, small voice, God comforted His prophet, corrected his perspective, and gave him a new mission. God strengthened Elijah again. His journey wasn't over, and maybe yours isn't either. The same God who answered by fire on Mount Carmel still speaks today in the quiet moments, and He is still calling hearts back to Him. Elijah's journey did not end in silence. It did not fade into history like so many others. When the time came, Elijah was walking with his successor. Elisha step by step, moment by moment, when suddenly the air shifted. The ground seemed to tremble. The sky itself opened up, and without warning, a chariot of fire appeared, pulled by horses of flame, blazing with the untamed glory of God. This wall of fire separated the two men, and before Elisha could even speak, Elijah was lifted from the earth, caught up in a whirlwind, and carried into heaven by the very power he had proclaimed. There was no grave, no sickness, no final, weary breath, no defeat, just glory. Elisha fell to the ground, tearing his clothes and crying out, not in despair, but in revelation, because he had seen it with his own eyes. God is faithful to those who walk with Him to the very end. Elijah's life was a powerful message, but his departure was a promise. It's a promise that God rewards radical obedience. It's a promise that heaven is real, and that this life is not all there is. It's a promise that those who stand boldly for Him are never, ever forgotten. The same God who shut the heavens at Elijah's word, the same God who sent fire from the sky to prove He is real, is the same God who still reigns today, seated on His throne, and His voice, which once spoke in a whisper to a discouraged prophet, is still calling hearts right now back to Himself. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing for more.